Hi, I'm Julia. Welcome to the Writer's Room again. Today I have a story for you that is a true story that took place about 40 years ago, where I grew up in a very remote, wooded, hilled, mountainous area of western Massachusetts. The title is A Mountain Lion's View for my brother Dave. It was a warm day in late March. The winter snow had begun melting into pools of slush down our dirt road. My brother and I built wooden bridges made of sticks. We would carve trenches into the pool, in between the pools to make these bridges, then to blow them up as we stomp our feet in them. Mud, water, and wood are ejected into the air with the joyfulness of living in the moment. This endeavor of ours lasts just so long, and our attention finally wanes from it. We need something else to do. With maybe 2 hours or so left of sunlight on this rare, warm spring day, I decided we should go for a walk and investigate the old deep well up on the hill above the field. We will take the dogs as they appreciate a fun adventure too. Layla, our German Shepherd, and Tanner, our Chesapeake Bay Retriever, are always eager to follow us anywhere in this isolated backcountry of Massachusetts. Who knows what we may discover out in the woods besides the old well. We need some snacks, maybe a thermos of hot chocolate too, I say to my brother Dave. He smiles and says, "This is going to be so much fun." We amble off to the house, peel off our muddy boots, and leave them on the porch. We traipse into the kitchen with Nancy. I announce that we'd like to make a picnic of snacks and a thermos of hot chocolate because we decided it was such a warm day today and that we've been inside so much lately. I look over to my brother, Dave, and give him a bold stare with a wide-eyed look, just to make sure he doesn't let it slip of our plans to go to the old well. He's a good soldier and doesn't flinch at my serious look. I'm busily collecting snacks, opening cabinet doors and drawers to find sugary treasures. I announce loudly, and for good measure, that there are some dry areas in the field across from the big barn which would be a perfect place for a picnic today. I fill an old canvas backpack with goodies and make a quick exit to leave off for exploring into the wilds of our woods. Once we cross the dirt road at the end of our driveway, we enter the field to get onto an old logging path that goes up the mountain. Crossing the field, we notice it lays flat with last year's hay impressed upon it with the relief of the melting snow. When we enter the woods, it still has several inches of snow at its edges, melting, but still there. It is in the shadows of the pine trees, so it takes much longer to melt. We walk onto the edge. Our boots sink in deep. A squelching sound makes us laugh with each step. The dogs are smarter, though. They jump over the mud and snow, leaping ahead of us and onto the path that leads up the mountain. In these hills, there are old stone cellar holes that once had a small primitive house on its foundations, of what is appropriately called field stones. Deep impressions into the ground, they are. The forests of Massachusetts were clear-cut for its lumber that left it stripped and barren hundreds of years ago. Nearly all its valleys were gone. It has been recalled you could see Boston and even the tip of the Cape from some of the taller mounts. You see, this land was once owned by the King of England, who had decimated its Native American populations with land appropriations given to the settlers. It was the Mohicans that once lived on these lands we walk through now. The miles of stone walls in these woods are a reminder of a long-forgotten connection to the past and its dark history. Like the old well we search for today, perhaps has a story to tell, too. The last time I was out here in these woods was in January with my father, as he was cutting down ash and maple trees for next year's firewood supply. There was a lot of snowpack and these cellar holes. One such cellar hole I fell into. Today, we are out here trying to find that very cellar hole. We find the cellar hole in quick work, 10 minutes, that I did fall into. We get to its edge and peer over and look at its bottom with its leaves and mud and sticks and decay. and quickly decide that we should move on. Dave says, "Are we getting closer to the well? I'm hungry and I want some of that hot chocolate." In my backpack, I have our snacks and the thermos of hot chocolate. I shift its weight on my slim shoulders. Yeah, it's close. We slouch off to find this mysterious well. There's a darkness about this particular land, West Hampton. It's camouflaged with a disparaging history that surrounds us in these woods, the colors of brown and orange and gray. The market is such, but our youth keeps us shielded from it now. Walking through its stillness, it's quiet. We finally come upon the old well, but not before we see a pile of bones of animal carcasses that lay about, an area that is scuffled with loose dirt and strewn with pine needles. It looks like these bones have been here a long time, I tell my brother. What could have done this, he replies. Bear, maybe? I don't know. The dogs are delighted to investigate these pile of bones, but we turn our attention to the well and the rusty old car hood that's laying over the top of it. I wonder what's down there, says Dave. We each grab an edge and give it a shove. It scrapes against the stones with a high pitch of sound. It lands with a vibrating ring and crashes onto the ground next to the well. I don't remember what exactly we were expecting to see that day so long ago, but I do remember this. The well was so deep and so dark, we could not see the bottom. We threw stones into it and waited for the faintest sound of a splash that we could hear. We did notice that we could yell into it, and our voices would come ricocheting back at us with a resounding baritone. After a few minutes of fun, and with our curiosities fulfilled, we put the old car hood back on the well and made our way back down the mountain, dogs in tow. About halfway down, we find a large boulder, flat at the top and easy to climb up. We decided to stop for a picnic of snacks on this large rock, because it would afford us a view of their farm and its fields below. I did tell my stepmother we would be in the fields close by. Close enough, I say to myself. We dump out our snacks, divvy them up, and lavishly eat them all. The hot chocolate is cooled to a tepid temperature. I pour it into small paper cups. We relish the flavor as it goes down. We appear satisfied with our adventures. The dogs join us up on the rock, hoping for a share of our sugary treats. I don't know what made me look behind me that day, but if I hadn't, perhaps we would have stayed too long, languishing and laughing our childhood away that warm spring day halfway down the mountain on that boulder top. But there she was, sitting perfectly still and precariously present was a mountain lion, and she was watching us with eyes of bright yellow, staring down at us from her perched place. My mind raced with how to leave and carefully get back to our cabin. Without any fanfare, I say to my brother, "Let's get home, but before we find ourselves in trouble for being gone so long. We would not want Nancy to worry." I ended it right there because just to give it a little more added suspense, and obviously here we are all these years later. Of course we made it. But I was really frightened as an 11-year-old to see that big cat watching us. And of course, all the piles of bones we had found up in the woods too, which was, it's a part of something that it's part of a mountain lion's habitat, and that is actually not that uncommon to have then found piles of bones, carcasses like that. They have about 100-mile radius that is their area. I did think that was a female. She was fat, really fat, as she sat there, and it was late March, so perhaps her babies were about to be born, or maybe that they already had been born, but I do think that was a female that was watching us. I didn't tell my brother then, while we were sitting there on that boulder having our snacks, that she was behind us. Very carefully, and kept it to myself until we got back to the house. But as we walked down the rest of the mountain and into the field, I kept checking behind my shoulder and looking at her, sitting up there, still watching us. I often thought, it was like, what about the dogs? I didn't really realize it then, but I would imagine that we were downwind of the mountain lion. She could smell us, but we couldn't smell her. Or the dogs couldn't smell her. Because I think if they had seen her, they definitely would have run after her. But that would have ended badly. But that was quite a memory. And I've struggled with it a little bit writing it because I haven't been able to find the right words. I did want to throw in some history about the Mohicans that lived in that area and how its lands were so changed when the settlers came in. And there was many, and there still is many cellar holes out there and stone fences. In the middle of the woods, you would just find these just miles and miles of fenced-in stone walls that go up and down over the hills into the valleys. But that was an area that was clear-cut at one point for all its timber to make ships. And mostly it's now mostly pine, mostly oak trees are gone. There's some maple and ash trees left. We did spend a lot of time out there. So I've got a lot of stories. And I know I've had stories about my brother Dave before, but don't worry, my other two brothers are coming. And those will be fun stories too to tell.